another episode of Stuck in My Mind podcast. I am your host, WIZE, and today's guest is rewriting the rules on burnout, belief, and becoming unbeatable from the inside out. My next guest is a master hypnotist, human design guru, and coach for high performers hungry to live life on their own terms. She's shifted thousands out of survival mode and into thriving using hypnosis, NLP, and heart-fueled design strategy. If you're ready to go deeper than the bullet journals and hustle culture, my next guest has the map. Let's welcome to the Stuck in My Mind podcast, Michelle Boyde.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. Thank you for being being a guest. I'm excited.
Me too. Always up for a good chat.
All right. So, walk us back. What hit first, the burnout or the I'm done moment?
Oh, for me personally, those two things were definitely intertwined. So, if we go back 7 years ago, I was a consultant. So I was working with C-suite, doing brand and culture strategy, and I hit that place that I think a lot of people do, where you're technically very successful. You've kind of ticked a lot of boxes, and you look at your life and you're like, yep, I've done the things, I was told to do, and I'm making good money, and I've got the good job title, I've got all the stuff, but I felt deeply unfulfilled, and I was working crazy hours, and I was genuinely really, really burnt out. And I actually had this particular moment. I'd finished this massive comms project for this big construction company in Australia, and finished it. And my boss had said to me, it's Friday drinks. Can you just share with the rest of the consultancy kind of an overview of what you've already presented to the exec team before we kind of sign off? And I was due to go away on holiday for 3 weeks. I was heading off to India to kind of really check out. And I had this moment, when there was only, 25 colleagues standing in there with a beer, and this panic attack, and I'd never had one before in my whole life, came across me. And if anybody has ever had one, it's like the whole world narrows and you can't see anything. Even getting any words out my mouth felt like the biggest uphill struggle. And this is a woman who I love to get on stages and present, and I do keynote speaking. So I'm one of those people that thinks that's a fun time, And I was like, I can't do this. And I remember literally grabbing my bag and bolting for the lift and heading out of the building. And, my boss text messaging me, 15 minutes later saying, where the hell are you? And this is the thing with burnout. It tends to kind of come out of nowhere. You often feel like you're tracking really successfully and you're fine and you're still holding it all together. And then out of nowhere, it hits and you have something like a panic attack or you just have complete meltdown. And that was a year before I left my career. After that, I was like, I need to find a way out of this. And then I did. And that was 7 years ago.
Awesome. So how did hypnosis become your secret weapon to shift beliefs faster than traditional coaching ever could?
So I stumbled into hypnosis. It wasn't actually something that I planned. So when I left my career 7 years ago, I was like, I've got no idea what is next. I'm just going to see what pops up. And I decided after a while, I was like, I want to become a coach, but I want to become a really kind of world-class coach. And there's a lot of coach trainings out there. So I took a while to find the one I wanted to do. And I started to do this master's in coaching. And one of the first qualifications was a practitioner in hypnosis. And as soon as I was in that room and I was starting to do it, I was like, okay, this is absolutely my thing. And some things just come to you very easily. They click in almost as if you've done them for years.
Yeah.
And that was the case. And over the last 6 years, the sort of impact you can have with something that is as gentle as and enjoyable as hypnosis is incredible. And where I'm at now is that the work I do is in what I call the liminal space. So it's when you are basically between these two identities. So you've totally shed who you were. You're not that person. You kind of look at that person, you're like, that's not me anymore. But you haven't actually yet stepped in to this person over here that you're becoming. And you're in this weird in-between kind of electric terrain. And the reason why hypnosis is so fantastic for this is that what that liminal space is actually asking of you is to master the person you're becoming. And that's not up here at a head level. It is very much deep in your body, deep in the belief level. And that's really what I use hypnosis for. And I've developed the alchemy sequence, which is a sequence that takes you through that liminal space. So you fully embody, master that person that you know you're meant to be.
So, what was your breakthrough belief you had to drop to design a life by your own rules?
It was understanding that there is a completely different life available to you that is not based on anything you've experienced so far. So it was that possibility could look completely different to what I thought possibility was going to look like. Because when you talk to people, and often when people are leaving careers and they're heading off to build businesses or to do something different, what people do, and you'll see people do this, when they're not sure what the next thing is, they kind of get out the notepad, they've got the pen, they sit down with a cup of tea, and they're kind of brainstorming out, where am I going to go? And what you find is they go back to the same criteria all the time. It's like, okay, what's my experience? What's my qualifications? What's my expertise? What are my strengths? What is all the stuff that people tend to put on their LinkedIn profiles, what they put on their resume or their CV? And the reality is you'll watch people, they start from there, they go off in another direction, and they end up back in that place. Because the end of the day, that the mind likes a framework. And so, this whole concept of think outside the box, not does it just seem like a cliche, right? And we've heard it so many times when someone says it, you kind of roll your eyes. But at the same time, your brain likes the box. And so we find ourselves in the same space with the same possibilities when we're always working to the same frameworks. And so I think things really change for people when they're able to put that aside and understand that how they might like to design their life doesn't actually have to do with anything like that, because that's all of the past, and the future has the possibility to look completely different. So that's a really big part of it.
Your shift involved reprogramming the subconscious. What's the difference between willing yourself and actually rewiring your belief?
So if you're willing yourself, the reality is you're operating from the conscious mind.
Okay.
And, a lot of people will know this stat, so it's not going to be hugely new, but the conscious mind is like 4 to 5% of your awareness. The subconscious is 95, 96%. Now, that conscious awareness is pretty much always from the head upwards. And that subconscious is always in the body. So not all of the body is subconscious, and I'll explain that in a moment, but the subconscious sits in the body. And so what happens is, we create a new vision, a new goal, a new something that we want, and we do it from the conscious mind. However, all the programming to deliver on that new vision would be sitting inside our subconscious. And yet what you have in your subconscious is the programming for exactly the person that you are today. So what you end up with is this like tug of war where you've got your conscious mind willing you in the direction of where you want to go, but all the programming for actually how you behave is sitting in your subconscious, and it's for the person that you were before and the goals that you've achieved before. And so the key is to be able to shift more of who you are into your conscious awareness. And there's different levels of that. And people get stuck because often when they're coming to terms with what their limiting beliefs are, they're working at a conscious level, or just when certain parts of their subconscious are coming into their awareness. So, for example, if I said to you now, can you put your awareness, your conscious awareness on your thoughts? It would be super easy. Like everybody can do that, right? Because they're up in their heads all the time. And if I said, hey, Will, tell me what you're thinking, you'd be able to tell me straight away what you're thinking. And then if I said to you, well, can you put your conscious awareness on, say, your left hand? You would be able to put your conscious awareness on your left hand. And then most people can start to feel a bit into their left hand and the sensations and perhaps what's happening in their left hand. And that's part of the subconscious that tends to rotate, relatively easily into our conscious awareness. But then what if I said to you, can you put your awareness on your gallbladder right now? Like a lot of people would not be able to do that because that's really in our subconscious, because it's all the stuff that's operating without us ever having to think about it. And that's the physical stuff like digestion, hormones, breathing, heartbeats, but it's also these patternings and ways that we move through the world. And so if you're just trying to will yourself with your conscious mind, you're unaware of so much of the automation of your identity that's sitting below the surface and effectively sitting below your chin for most people, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Why did human design become the key language for your change?
Human design was a really interesting part of my journey. And I don't know if are you familiar with human design? Do you know your human design?
No, that's what.
Okay, I will tell you all about it. So human design is your energetic blueprint of your potential. And if anybody's listening to this and you're like, oh, this sounds interesting, you can go to my website and you can run your chart completely for free. And I'll give you the address for that. You just go to Michelle Boyde, it's with an E on the end, .com/start, and you'll have access to it there. But essentially, there are 5 different types in human design, and there's all these different levels. But what it tells you is how your energy moves through your system, the type of energy you have, the flavor of that energy, and the way that it actually operates. And once you start to identify a little bit more of who you actually are and you can bring yourself into alignment, then what you're able to do is create your life from a place of how you're actually designed to operate. So, one of those types is a projector, and I am a projector. And if anybody is out there and you discover you're a projector or one of the other non-energy types, I'm sure this will really resonate with you, is that I don't have this constant source of energy that some of the other types have. And so when you start to look into human design, projectors are only meant to work 20 hours a week. So when I first started my business, I was operating like a generator. And about 70% of the population are generators, manifesting generators. They got tons and tons of energy. If they're doing work that lights them up, they can just go and go and go. And, you probably know these people. We all know these people. You go away on holiday with them and they wake up in the morning and they just want to go, 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 go. And you're sitting there thinking, gosh, I just want to sit down for a little bit, and they never seem to stop going. And then you've got other people a bit like myself that really needs these cycles of rest to be at her best. And so human design was really, really interesting because I suddenly started to see that there was lots of ways that I'd been conditioned by society, by the workplace on how I was meant to operate. And yet when you start to push those aside and you actually operate how you were designed energetically, then you have a lot more success. And I call this whole approach energetically sustainable success. So when you look into the body graph, which is what you get if you pop your details in, and you'll have a look at it, and it's got all these different centers, and some of them are motors. So they give us this flavor of energy. And as I say, we've got like a sacral motor, which is this continuous creative energy. If that's defined, it's like you wake up in the morning, you're full of energy, you use it up all day, and then you go to sleep at night. Then we've got other motors. We've got like the root motor, for example. And this is the one that kicks in. That kind of last minute thing. You might have a client say to you the night before, hey, I know this is last minute, but can you do something by 10 a.m. tomorrow morning? It's that kind of like get shit last minute done kind of energy. That's what kicks in. Not everybody has that. Some people do have that. And so there's all these different motors that when you start to understand this flavor of energy, you can design your business, your career, the way you run your life with the types of energy that you actually have available, because we don't all have the same parts. So it's been really profound. And I use that with clients to help them restructure the way that they run their life.
Awesome. Was there a moment when you knew this new life felt more you than the old career ever did?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. When was that moment? And you know why it's hard to pinpoint is because I feel that it's been this ongoing transition, Will. So, it felt very correct to step away from that consulting career.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's almost like my business and my life continues to evolve. And I feel that it's always heading more in the direction of alignment. So almost at any moment, it feels like, yes, this feels more and more, like me. And I think that, one of the ways that you can tell if something feels that it's correct for you is that you do have access to an energy inside yourself to keep moving forward. Like we get tired, things happen, I'm not suggesting we never feel tired, but there is this sort of pocket of energy that we can always tap into when we're on, that right course
Hmm.
for us?
For me, it's when I podcast.
Mm.
Like this. I wasn't in media. This wasn't me when then the pandemic hit and I was furloughed from work. So I had this equipment and I started podcasting, and I just fell in love with it. It wasn't work to me. I jumped into learning how to edit, learning how to do video, all these
Mm.
quality of mics. I just wanted to learn because it was so freeing for me because it was allowing me to learn, have some great conversations, and and it was just so much fun. And then when people started responding to the podcast, and then messages telling me, "Hey, this episode was great. Thank you. I needed to hear." Those kind of messages just encouraged me even more. They were like more inspiring for me. It was like, wow, I didn't know what my purpose was. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like I have a good paying job, but once I started podcasting and was able to just communicate with people and have these great conversations, it was like, all right, this is what I love. This is
Mm.
just being able to help and spread messages and help people share their stories, and if someone out there can gain anything from any of these episodes or any of the content I create, I'm happy with that.
Yeah. And like hearing you speak, the whole desire piece is really important in that. And, so much of the conversation, if you tap into certain entrepreneurial spaces, is that it's not about what you want. It's not about desire. It's about the gap in the market and the commercial opportunity. And there are obviously, for a business to work, that has to be there.
Yeah, of
But I
course.
think we discount the value of tapping into desire. And lots of people talk about, you want to have a passionate leader, or you want to have someone who's passionate, but you never have passion unless desire is already present. It's actually the bit that unlocks the passion, right? Like, for example, you never have passionate sex with somebody unless you have a desire first that kicks you into that passion. And so what we find ourselves being drawn to, that's really sitting like a desire on our heart, is really, really powerful. And I use this as a big starting point to move people through that liminal space that I was talking about. Because if there is a desire that you want, and you've got a strategy, you're taking actions and you're moving towards it, but you're not getting there, it's because there is some part of you somewhere in that subconscious that's not on board with that desire. So for us to clear those distortions, we have to know what the desire is, because they're always related to that desire. But you're a great example of when that desire burns and it just feels correct, that there's an ease of which you're able to move forward with stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Hmm.
So how do you blend hypnosis, NLP, design strategy, and spirituality without getting woo woo?
Without getting woo woo. Well, that's a good question, because a lot of people think it is woo woo. I think, do you know, one of the interesting things is people just having the experience of it. I have clients that fit on a quite a spectrum. So I have clients over here who believe in something bigger. And that might be religion, it might be another form of spirituality, but they're like, there's something bigger than me. And then I have clients over here who are highly analytical and don't, and not that you can't be both, but they're in that space and they don't really believe in anything outside of themselves. They're like, when I die, I'm done. There's nothing bigger. And what's really interesting with this particular group is that when we go back to certain places that, for example, we regress them to previous lives, because sometimes that's where the subconscious wants to go. And they don't believe in a previous life. They don't believe in incarnation. And yet we go back to that place. They have this incredibly visceral experience of what happens. And then we bring them back to here. And then the problem that they had has disappeared. And they're like, okay, so I don't necessarily believe in this stuff, but I know that something has changed in me. And so a lot of it is having the experience, and having the experience of being in your body. Like, I was working with a client, I've just finished with her actually. And one of the things that I was helping her with was also where she shifted her energy inside her body, which can feel really quite woo-woo, can't it? It's a bit like, oh, energy, where do shifting your energy? But I was guiding her to actually move it down her body and deeper into sort of almost her pelvic bowl. Because a lot of the time when we are striving for something and we're really reaching for it. And what I'm doing with my body here is obviously exaggerated. But when you're kind of doing this, your energy tips forward and then you become a little bit disembodied. And so when you can pull that energy fully back into your body and root it down into yourself, and then you drop, that almost energetic center of gravity, what you feel is very grounded, very sturdy, and you're able to, operate much, much more effectively. And so again, with this particular client, she'd never had this experience before. But as soon as she felt this shift, she's like, okay, well, I feel it. So, I don't necessarily have to understand it, but I feel it. And I think that's one of the beautiful things with hypnosis is you can see results really quickly. So even if you're somewhat skeptical, you can have, you have an experience. And then once you've had an experience, there's not much more to say, really.
So what's the one myth about stress or success that keeps people stuck even when they have the tools to get unstuck?
I think there's a few things with stress, I would say. But one of them is recognizing that it's not always to do with the outside stressor. So a lot of it is to do with your relationship to your stress. And this is why lots of different people can be put in equal situations and yet not experience the same level of stress. So there's certain times when we literally have to change the outside situation. It is too stressful. You can't hold that stress for so long. But your relationship to that stress is the most immediate thing that you can actually start to change. And this is where hypnosis is really useful, because when we take you into hypnosis, first of all, you cannot be stressed if I take you in hypnosis. It's not physiologically possible. Once we slow your brain waves, we put you into such a relaxed state, it's not possible. But once we're there, we can change your relationship to that stress. Because if you're feeling stressed, you're usually not here in the present moment. Anxiety, stress is all a worry about what is going to happen in the future. And if people recognize that in the absolute present moment that they're in, they can't have that same relationship to stress, it can change their whole experience of stressful situations, because it's ultimately all perception for the most part.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What walk us through a client case where life literally changed after one hypnosis session?
So, do you know the one I'm going to tell you about, because it's so, so close to my heart, is actually my dad. And this is one of those situations where when I did all my master hypnotist training, and it cost me a lot of money, and I've said if I never helped anyone else after my dad, this made it completely worth it. So my dad had very, very severe tinnitus, the buzzing that you get in the ears.
Yeah.
And he had it very extreme. So it was like buzzing, it was pressure changes, it was beeping, it was all sorts of different sounds, droning sounds. And it was so severe that he would say to my mum on really bad days, he was like, if you gave me a gun right now, I'd stick it in my mouth and shoot myself. That's how bad it was. And so when I qualified as a master hypnotist, I said to him, I've actually got the skill to help you with this, Dad. Let me help. And he was like, doctors say there's no cure for tinnitus. And I said, in Western medicine, that's correct. But, the man that has trained me has helped many, many men with tinnitus. So I said, look, you've got nothing to lose. You're my dad. I'm not going to charge you. Like, my only request is that you throw yourself in wholeheartedly, give it a go. And then he said, okay, I'm happy to do that. He said, I don't really believe in this stuff, but he said, I do believe in you, so we'll give it a go. And it took one session, and we went from like all of this noise and pressure change to this lower level. Like, we took it right down from like a 10 to a 2. And after that, he said, well, this is life-changing. And I said, well, we're going to keep going. It took us 7 sessions in total for it to completely disappear. So the first session took it right down, and then it took us a further 6 to get rid of that too. But that was over 5 years ago, and he's never had tinnitus come back again.
Wow.
So this is what's really interesting, Will, about the subconscious mind and how it operates. Because I'm not a doctor. I actually don't understand the intricacies of tinnitus and what causes it and why, you get those sounds. But the subconscious mind is hugely symbolic. And so we can go in using symbolism, and it understands that. So I literally, I am simplifying my process, but I basically told his subconscious mind to turn off the sound. And then also, and I don't know if you know this, and to anybody listening, is do you know what the emotion is that sits behind tinnitus?
No.
It's stubbornness. So if anybody's listening here and you've got a partner who has tinnitus or you've got tinnitus, you might be considering how stubborn your partner is. And so we worked on his stubbornness, and I basically told his brain to turn the sound off, just like turning the sound off on a stereo. And we turned the sound off and it's not come back. And so, the power of the mind and the power of the body, because it controls everything, right? It creates all this stuff. And so it actually knows how to uncreate it. Like when, for example, you cut yourself and, your body heals, it knows exactly when to stop healing, when to scab it over, when for the scab to fall off. It's not something that you consciously are involved in. It's just something that your body does, that your subconscious does. It's the wisdom that sits inside it is phenomenal.
So, human design freaks people out. How do you simplify it so they can use it, not just know it?
Not just knowing. So the key thing with human design is it is not something that you want to just pick up lots more information on. We tend to collect knowledge. That's a bit of a habit we have as humans. And what you need to do is actually, we call it in human design, experimenting with that knowledge. And the kind of starting point, if you do go and get your chart, if there's one thing I would suggest you do, it is look at something called your strategy and your authority. So your strategy is actually how opportunities in the world interact with you. And all the 5 different types have a different strategy. And then when all these various opportunities and the ways that you interact with the world come in, your authority is your decision making. It's the way that you are designed to make decisions. So when you put these 2 things together and you start to observe how things come into your world, and then you decide, is this right for me or is it not correct for me? You will start to really live your design. So if I make that practical with one of the kind of the types that you'll see a lot. So the generator, which 70% of the population is a type of generator. The strategy is to respond. So you literally pull lots of things in for you to respond to. You're responding all the time. Like if I say to you right now, would you like a cup of tea? Very English thing to say, but would you like a cup of tea, Will? I'm giving you something to respond to. Okay. And then if your authority is something that's called sacral, what you literally get is you'll have a yes or no come from your gut. You'll either be like, I want that cup of tea, Michelle, or you'll be like, I don't want it. And so what you would do if that was your setup, if you were a generator and you had sacral authority, is you'd start to really observe what are all the things I get to respond to, and you'd follow that sacral. Now, that sacral response is your body and not your head. And this is the thing, we make too many decisions from our head. We don't leverage the wisdom of that 96% of our subconscious and our body. And people override it. So you'll see this. Perhaps you get up in the morning and your partner says to you, do you want a cooked breakfast? I'll do eggs, toast, sausage, the whole thing. And your body, your sacral goes, because it wants it. It perhaps wants that fuel, for example. But your head goes, I'm in a bit of a rush this morning. I need to get to the office early, etc., etc. I'll just grab a coffee. And so we override this. So the way to start to really use human design and to experiment is to start actually following that strategy and authority, because the power is it puts you on exactly that course that you're meant to be on. You can almost think of it as it's like breadcrumbs from God, source, universe, whatever, is your belief system going, hey, come this way. And when we follow them, you end up in exactly the place that you're meant to end up.
You hypnotize people in groups of 80 plus. Tell us what that looks like and feels like.
So it actually feels exactly the same as if we do it one-on-one, to be honest. The wonderful thing about hypnosis is if you can hear my voice, I can hypnotize you. So I'm not hypnotizing you right now, but I promise. I'm very ethical. But yeah, you only have to hear my voice. So I often do these big sessions at, different conferences and workshops where there'll just be a whole room of people all laying down or sitting up. And I guide them with my voice through it. I've also done it over Zoom. So during COVID, when everybody was, and in Australia, which was where I was at the time, we were locked down for a very long time. I was doing it for some of the big corporates as experiences for clients and also for their employees. And yeah, it's deeply relaxing. So it may feel initially as if you're going into a meditation, but then you'll reach a point when I will draw your attention to things and you'll realize that you can't lift your arms and you can't open your eyes, for example. And then we get into a place where you will drift up and down through different brainwave states. So most people find that they have times when they feel quite alert, and then they'll have periods where they feel like my voice almost starts to get quite far away, and that they're less aware of some of the stuff that's been said. But it's deeply relaxing because you really are just shifting down into these brainwave states that mean that you can't experience any stress and anxiety, and your nervous system shifts into that parasympathetic division where you get that rest, that rejuvenation. So yeah, I love doing big groups, to be honest, because it's like you take everybody out of it and then people are like, oh, I went here and I saw this and I felt this. And yeah, it's really good fun.
Awesome. But for someone drowning in hustle and productivity culture, how do you reintroduce meaning without making it mental?
Oh, that's a really good question. So the way that I like to pull them back is to get them out of their heads, get them into their heart, and start off with their desires. Now, let me talk you through this because it kind of goes back to front.
Okay.
So, because we talk a lot about purpose, right? And lots of people are actively seeking their purpose.
Hmm.
And I think, I left my job because I wanted to do more meaningful work. This is meaningful for you. We want to do purposeful work. One thing I will caveat is that the pursuit of purpose, if it doesn't have action associated with it, can become the ultimate self-sabotage. So you have lots of people who are almost waiting to discover their purpose before they go out and they really change things. And it's like, well, I just need to work out my purpose first. And it can also feel quite a lot of pressure, my purpose, this big thing. And so my advice is to totally put purpose down. And this is because if you subscribe to the idea that you have a purpose, that you've been put on this earth to do something, then you must prescribe to the idea that you've been given the potential to execute it.
Mm.
So I say that your potential is the gateway to your purpose. So leave purpose, focus on just experiencing more and more of your potential, which is sitting in your human design, by the way, and then you'll end up on purpose. And then the bit that comes before that is the desire piece, because your desire will point you in the direction of your potential. So if we keep it really simple, really tap into your heart's desires, not the ones that are in your head, not all of that conditioning about what you think you should be doing, because we all have that stuff. We have all these definitions of success that we've picked up from our parents, from society. But what is the stuff that is really sitting on your heart? And place your energy there, and you will end up accessing your potential and ultimately doing more purposeful work.
Mm. So, what does living by your design actually feel like in daily life?
Do you know one of the ways it really feels is you feel that you are operating in a rhythm that feels like you. And that rhythm is different for everybody. But there is this sense of correctness to the way that you are moving through the world. And within that correctness, you will feel that it complements your energy and the way that your energy moves. And you will also feel that you are in the right places with the right people, having the right conversations, and using the magic that is inside of you. Because all of us have, whether you call it magic, you call it genius, everybody has something about them that is really special. And going back to what I said at the beginning of the conversation, it often doesn't fit in those boxes that we have used of expertise and strengths and qualifications, etc. It can be something, that is not something that you would necessarily always notice. For example, with a client that I've been working with, we discovered that she has this wonderful ability that when she is present, when other people are having a discussion, she changes the tone and the way that they interact with each other. And it's not that she's really a negotiator as such. She doesn't even really need to say anything. And this can be, she's observed this, she could be in a business meeting, or she could literally be stood in the coffee shop waiting for her coffee. And just her presence between, say, the barrister and the customer actually shifts. So there's a real superpower and magic to her. And that's not something that you would ever list on your CV. Just my presence changes the way people operate. But it is something that we've tested in lots of scenarios, and this is really true for her. So when you're really living by your design, it isn't just, am I living the life I want to live? It's that you feel that you're moving with a level of correctness that just feels like you're really being yourself. You don't feel that you're being someone else.
So, where are people getting it wrong with human design and hypnosis?
So with human design, I think the way people get stuck is that they don't actually use it. They don't apply it and see how it plays out for them. Because what you don't want to do is have it become another dogma. So you will get, you as you learn about your human design, you'll understand how things play out. But you need to then apply that and look at how it works in your reality. So it's very important to apply it, experiment it, and see, okay, that's exactly how that bit plays out for me. So if you're embarking on the human design route, I'd say don't just keep trying to grab information. Don't just stick it all into ChatGPT and get a load of information, because you won't get that much from it. You need to apply it to your life and see how it plays out. And when it comes to hypnosis, the key is really to get deep into those roots that you want to work on. You know, when I talk about that liminal space, that place between where you are, what you're really being asked to do is to truly, truly master yourself. And there is a difference between what you think and what you believe. So, thinking is situational, whereas your beliefs are not. So, to make that tangible, for example, and I do hate using this 6-figure, 7-figure, 8-figure, but we all know what it means, which is why it's good, right? Is let's say you sit in a room of 6-figure business owners and you are able to say, I'm successful, right? And yet, if we move you into a room with 8-figure business owners and you can no longer say, I'm successful, you suddenly start to feel that you're less than, then you think you're successful. You don't actually believe you're successful. Because when we change the situation, you feel differently. Whereas if you truly believe that, it doesn't matter what room I put you in, you believe that you are successful. And so the key is to move ourselves, the things we think, into the things that we believe. And that is the embodiment piece. And so where people perhaps don't get the results they want from hypnosis is where they're not truly shifting stuff fully down into embodiment and finding the root of things that allow those things to be fully collapsed down into the body.
For someone jacked on hustle but starved on soul, what's the first small step toward redesign?
The first step towards redesign is, I would, from a very kind of logical and practical point of view, I would say, what can I remove? Because if you feel like there's too much, there probably is too much. And so find at least one thing that you can take away, whether that is something that you can stop completely, something you can give to someone else, or you can at least ask for support from. And if you sit there and you're listening to me and you're thinking, that's all very well and good, but I actually can't get rid of anything, ask somebody to look at your life with you, because there will be, from some perspective, something that can be shifted. And then the second part is give yourself the experience of being in your body and relaxed in your body, even if it's only for 10 minutes a day. So find 10 minutes, even if it's before you get up in the morning, close your eyes and just sit quietly, breathe, be in your body before you launch into the day and all the things that the day entails. It's not a very sexy answer, but it's actually it's really the starting point. And get your hands on some hypnosis, because it will really, really give you some relief.
You've redefined your life, coach souls, turned skeptics into believers. Is there a bigger mission waiting on the horizon for you?
So the reason I love the work that I'm doing now in this liminal space is I'm really working with these visionary people. And the thing with this liminal space is that it's not just kind of day-to-day ongoing growth. They're almost like these big quantum leaps. They're when people are stepping into, I actually hate that expression because it sounds so coachy and I'm not a coach, but it's this, it's mastering this next version of themselves, right? And what's powerful about being involved in that particular part of their experience is once they master that next version, they go on to do incredible things. And, I think when we look at the world, there's lots of stuff we're aware, the phase that we're in collectively, humanity wise, that needs to be solved. There's lots of things that we haven't really mastered. We've got to find new ways of operating. And I don't believe all of that's going to happen in these big corporates. They have their role to play, but I think some of the brilliant things that are going to come out are going to be from smaller businesses, startups, and individuals. And so, my part of helping those people really experience more of their potential so they can do that stuff is, for me, that feels really significant.
What's your non-negotiable daily practice to stay aligned and energized?
It is. So there's hypnosis, I have to say that. But the other piece for me, especially being a projector, is I just have to go and lay down on my own for like 20, 30 minutes a day where I am not near anyone. When I reach this point where it just feels like there's a lot happening in my field, I just go and lay down, I discharge it, and I feel back to being myself. Um, your cough's okay. But that's really a key thing. I think, when we are amongst everybody else all the time, we pick up so much stuff. And the ability to just find a little bit of time on our own is again really, really powerful. One of the things that happens in this liminal space, and if any of you are in this space, you will know what it feels like because you don't feel like who you were and you don't feel like who you're becoming. You start to really question if you can do it or not. And it's almost as if the analogy I like to give is, when you watch a horror movie and you have the monster and they kind of come up over the cliff and their arm goes to kind of drag you back one last time. This is sort of what's happening. So it's like the inner critic is coming up, trying to pull you back. Your emotional roller coaster is huge. And, you're questioning so much stuff when you're in this in-between period. It can be really uncomfortable. And what you'll see people do is that they go actively outside of themselves to seek more. So, more podcasts, more books, more workshops, more information, more inspiration. And that's good to a point, but actually it just can create more chaos. There is a point at which we almost have to turn it all off and go, I'm my authority. What's happening for me? And so finding that little bit of time to ourselves every day, for as much as you can find, where you just don't put any more into, you just let some of it go, is really, really powerful. It's feeling yourself.
When your clients look back in 5 years, what do you want them to say you helped them rediscover?
A part of themselves that they'd forgotten, or a part of themselves that they hadn't yet met. Because for me, it's, our perspective on life dictates what is possible for us. And if you imagine that you're standing in one room in your house and you're looking out a one window, and that's where you stand, that is your view, that's your perspective on your outside life. And, maybe one day it rains, maybe one day it's sunny, maybe you put some sunglasses on, but generally speaking, you have that same view, that same perspective. And most people spend their lives kind of standing at the same window. They sometimes press their face up against it, they sometimes step back, but they're generally at the same window. The work that I do is to help you leave that room, walk to a completely different room in your house and look out a totally different window. So you look out, you see something completely different. And that's when you go, oh my gosh, there's a totally different possibility available to me. And so that's when you start to meet these other parts of yourself. And so I would love my clients to say that Michelle moved me to a completely different window to see a completely different perspective.
Awesome. Well, we've come to the part of the show where now you get the solo screen, and you get to plug away and let everybody know where they can find you, your website, everything.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. Um, Great if you're still here and listening. If any of this has interested you, I've got a bunch of resources. If you go to michelleboyde.com/start, and my surname Boyd has an E on the end. A lot of Boyds don't, but I do. So it's michelleboyde.com/start. You'll see a bunch of things there. So there is a liminal archetype quiz. So if you're listening to me thinking I may be in the liminal, what you can do there is work out which of the archetypes you are, and then you'll have lots of resources to help you collapse that liminal space so you can really master this person that you're coming. There's also the human design chart there, if that interests you. And then there's some other stuff around desire and collapsing time. I work with people one-on-one. So if you're interested to come work with me like that, you can come in through those routes and then you'll be able to contact me. And I also have the alchemy sequence, which is my proprietary precision sequence, and that's shared in various other ways. And as you come into my world through those channels, you'll be able to find out how to access that. So michelleboyde.com/start.
Great, great, great. So I do go live, and we had Desiree of Sunshine come and said I learned something helpful from every podcast. And thank you for tuning in, Desiree. I really appreciate you tuning in. And then she goes, especially love the belief versus thinking comment that hit home. So it's these are the reasons I really do enjoy doing the podcast, is because if if one person can get anything from any of the content I create, or any of the guests that I bring on, that to me is success. That to me is making an impact and helping someone out.
Yeah, I agree. I love it.
But thank you so much for being such a great guest. This was awesome. I loved it.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been lovely to chat to you.
The pleasure was all mine. I'm excited. I'm excited to cut it up and release the clips to it. I will send tag you and send you any clips and everything. So thank you so much for being a wonderful guest. I greatly appreciate you being on. But don't leave just yet. Let me close out the show, and then we'll chat a little bit off the air. But thank you so much for being such a great guest.
Thank you for having me, Will.
Our pleasure's all mine. All right, everybody. Another great episode is in the books. I appreciate everybody tuning in. If Michelle's insights gave you chills or a plan, you know what to do. Go check out Michelle Boyd with an E.com. Grab your free human design chart, or book a strategy session and strap in for a great session. And if you know a soul stuck in the hustle who needs a mind shift, send them this episode. Let's rewire them real fast. Stay aligned, stay unconventional, and stay wise. You know how your boy Wise does it. Peace out.